Hi everyone, this is Nicki with Design Like a Pro. Welcome back. We are going to continue from the base brochure template, the document setup that we did in a previous lesson, and continue with the design. Now this one's going to be really fun because I'm going to give you several tips along the way that is going to help you with your brochure designs and really get you to think a little bit different about how to take a brochure and lay it out. We're going to push some boundaries, talk about what works and what doesn't, and really just give you some tips that are going to up your game overall. And a lot of these are actually really good for non-brochures too. So let's dive in. We have InDesign here. This is the template where we left off. I have a couple things on the side just to make it quicker as we move through the design. But we're going to design a sort of kid-friendly, family-friendly design today. Wanted to make something a little bit more fun. And just keep in mind that this is one design. There's so many directions that you can go with this. So I'm really just trying to teach you some overall principles that will help you design brochures in the future. And by all means, you can change the imagery, the text, all of the things that you see here are completely customizable to your scenario. But this just gives you a starting point when you really want to move forward and design an eye-catching brochure. So when I have my layout here ready to go, we've got our panels and we have our 2 pages. So the inside of the brochure and essentially the outside, if you will. And we have our front, back, and then this is what folds in, and then our 3 panels when it lays flat. So that's important to know that flow because it does design a little bit different based on that knowledge. And you'll see some of the decisions are made to really take advantage of what we have when we have a brochure that is folded. One thing that I really like to do first is think about the imagery and what's going to go into this brochure and make sure that I have all of that ready to go. The other thing that I like to do is pre-select my colors. A lot of times you're working with brands and those are going to have set colors that you need to work with. So I like to have those all ready to go as well. And then I start my design process. As always, I like to work from the back forward. And what this means is that we're going to work with the background color. So in this particular brochure, I'm not going to leave it just a solid white as the core background color. So when we want to apply something universally to all of the pages of our document, it's great to use InDesign's master pages for that. So we are going to jump in here and grab a rectangle really quickly, draw this out, and I'm going to choose the sort of off-white cream color as our background. And then you can see that that applies universally now to our entire document. So we have a nice background color to work from. Now it's entirely up to you how you like to design your brochure, but I tend to kind of go right to left when I'm working on the outside, and then I work on the inside and bring that all together. So that means that I tend to think about what this first front panel is going to look like and how then everything else flows with that. This leads to the number one tip that I have for you in all brochure design, and that is 100% to try to break away from designing in panels. This happens so often, and as soon as you start breaking away from the panels, your designs go to the next level. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, by default, we tend to just put designs in the panel of which it lives. We don't think about what the design can do when we want to extend beyond the panel. And a great way to extend beyond the panel is through color blocking and images. You typically do not want to do that with text because there's a chance the text is going to line up right here in your little fold line, and you don't necessarily want that. But there are elements of an image or a block of color that can easily go in the fold line, and it's not going to hurt anything. And it's really going to make your design look so much better. So let's see what this looks like in action. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to place my first image. So I'm going to grab this frame just so that we can block this out. And again, I am not going to just stick with my image loading in here on the front panel. I really want to push this beyond that. So let's carry this image across the back all the way. And we're going to use our guides so we know exactly where the fold line is. That way we keep really important information away from the fold. But I want this to be quite large and expand through the majority of the front and the back. And I also want to make this on a slight rotation. So I'm just going to go to this corner and have this go on a rotation. Now, once you do something like that, you do need to be mindful of your bleeds. We want this graphic to go all the way to the edge and trim so it's nice and clean. So we're going to extend this box well beyond our bleed lines just to ensure that that image is filling edge to edge. And I'm not going to be as concerned about this line up here because we're going to fix that with our other elements. So for now, I've got this frame, and let's go ahead and drag and drop in our first image. So we get something like this, and I like to right click on this and fit this proportionately just to make sure I'm filling that space. So you can see what happens here, and the image that was chosen for a reason for this design. You can see that we're really focusing on the faces of this adult and child in our front panel. So it fits really well in the front panel. We're not cutting off anybody's face. It all fits here. We're just cutting off some other elements that aren't as important as cutting off someone's face. But what happens when we go into the back panel is her shoulder, and then a lot of space over here ends up on this back panel. So that's going to create a nice effect for our back panel. But again, we're not losing really important information in the fold line. So this was chosen with intention, and imagery is so important in anything that you're designing to really think about that, because there are images here that would not work as well. And to show an example of that, here's another image, and we're going to use this somewhere else in our design. But you can see that, okay, we've got a bunch of fun, happy kids here, but like their eyes, two of their eyes are right in that fold line. That's not as ideal as you want that to be. It's okay over here and over here, but this doesn't work. So if I was working on a project and I was given this image to use, I would need to use this somewhere else to optimize how we view this image. And that is why we have this one instead for the front. Makes much better sense. Okay, so the next step that I like to do once I kind of have this, and now I get some things going on because I chose to place this main image. I now have a lot of space over here and some space over here to fill. Again, this is the front and this is the back panel. So we do need to think about the order of content as we begin to lay it out. So in this particular design, I do want some color blocking to happen to really emphasize areas for content and areas for image. So let's think about where additional images will go first, and that will help kind of fill in some of these blank spaces. So I'm going to grab this frame tool again, and I'm thinking this would be a great place for text. We're going to do a really cool color block effect here for the back panel that will incorporate this illustration and some text and the call to action, phone number, website. And that leaves this internal panel. Like once I open this brochure, what am I looking at? So I'm thinking that this would be a great opportunity to do a color block above with some text. And then that image that didn't work on the front would be great down here because it will not be cut off and nobody's going to end up in the fold line. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and drag out a frame just to give us something to work with to place that second image. All right, and then I'm going to go and drag and drop this in here. Okay, so it fills it automatically too large, so let's go ahead and fill that proportionately. The fact that this little guy over here is cut off is not ideal. So in this situation, if you ever find that you want to adjust an image, you can click on this center here, and what this does is it allows you to scale this image within the frame. So now I've got these controls over here. I'm going to hold down Control or Command Shift, and then I'm going to scale this to where I kind of crop those out, those two on the left out. And it's just going to be a more pleasing image and more focus on these three faces. And now I'm done with that and we're good to go. Okay, so what's happening here? One thing I need to do is I want to make sure that this is coming all the way across, and I want to send this backwards. So it's behind this image. And this little intersection is going to get covered by a color block in a second, but that's just a kind of better layering effect to ensure that those lines are the way we want it. And again, keeping in mind where things fold is very crucial here so that you are putting non-important things in those areas. So now what we're doing by working from the back forward and replacing those larger elements first, now we're really seeing opportunities for the rest of our content, which is primarily going to be text. So I can definitely just drop text into these areas and call it a day, but this is a great opportunity to utilize color so that we don't have just a boring brochure. So let's place some color around here, and then we'll see where our text is available. All right, so I'm going to work on this panel first, and I'm going to take a rectangle now, and I'm going to click and drag, and essentially we're going to fill this entire area, and it's going to autofill with this color, which is what I want, but you can select whatever color you want over here. Okay, so now we've got a nice pop of color here that is going to separate this out, but I don't want this to be on top of everything. I want this to be layered underneath of everything to really keep this line nice of the way that this image comes across. And if I hit W to preview, I can really see what's going on here when this prints out, that we're actually creating a really neat line, geometric shapes here between our color blocking and our images. And the fold line for our brochure cuts right down here. So this situation is not going to be disrupted by the way this brochure folds. All right, so now we've got a nice block here. I'd like to add another pop of color to address this area on the back. I'm going to need a little bit more room to place text that I don't have just by having this space available. And due to the colors and contrasts of the image, putting text on top of this is not really going to be legible. Which leads me to my next point about legibility. Oftentimes, people are making decisions with brochures because you do have such a small amount of space to work with, and it really hinders the legibility of the content. So all of your decisions that you make need to ensure accessibility, meaning legibility of this brochure. The colors that you choose, people can see, and the text and font and size all works together to be able to see it. And if you run into a case where you have an image and the text is not going to work because of the contrast or it's too busy, color blocking really is a great way to give you more room to place text. So what I mean by that is I'm going to grab another rectangle and I'm just going to drag this out really quickly. And we know we don't want it to be white or this color. We want it to be another color in our palette. So we have this really cool mint green here that is going to add to this as a back panel. And this is another great example of how to break the boundary, because by default, you may really want to try to stick this so that it stays just here on this back panel, or you may take it to where it fills the back panel all the way down like this. And there's nothing really wrong with this approach, but from a design standpoint, it really doesn't help much with the design when you do this. So another approach is to layer it like we've already done here to keep this design consistent, and we can continue to break outside of our boundaries a little bit. And so I'm going to take this slightly over so that it bleeds into this color a little bit, and then we're going to make it a little bit smaller here, and we're going to make this come in just a little bit here, and we're going to take it up just about to her chin level. And then we're going to rotate it to keep in line with this. And one thing about rotating elements in design, especially when it's subtle, is that it does create a little bit more of a playful design. And since we're designing something that's kid family friendly, playful is a good option here. So you can see now what we have. We've created a front and back panel. This leaves us some room for content, and another place for content. And again, by designing this way, you're helping yourself make some decisions, and it really breaks down that blank canvas effect that really stalls you in making decisions for your design. So now all that we have left on this panel is to fill in with some content. So really quickly here, I'm going to drag this guy to our front panel, and if he ends up behind, you can right click and bring that to the front. And we want to make everything in here the same rotation. So I can come up here and see what this rotation is. Go ahead and quickly copy that, click on my illustration and paste that so it ends up on the same rotation as our box. And now let's see where we can put some text. So if we have our front panel here, we just want to style a little bit of text And this means that we don't want to overfill our content. Oftentimes with brochures, there's a lot of content to get out. We don't want to overfill. This is a great opportunity to emphasize imagery and very quick scannable text. So anytime that you can edit back the text on a brochure, the better. It's not a place to overstate things and share everything you possibly can, but really it's just the essentials to get the attention of somebody in the hopes that they're going to go to your website, call you, or whatever the call to action may be. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill this with placeholder text and then scale this way back to just a sentence. And then we're going to go ahead and style this. So I want this text to be gray, not black. So let's go ahead and create a new color swatch to give us the color that we want here. And just a slight gray, dark gray works here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that. Just drag that down to my color group so I have it. So now we have a nice gray. The black is a little bit too harsh for the palette that we have. And I would like to center this. Now, another tip that I have for you is do not center everything on your brochure. It's okay to center smaller groups of text, and you're going to see here that quite a bit of the text on this brochure design is centered, but it's not long paragraphs of text. Anytime that you have a lot of text, then you're going to want to not center that. It just makes it a lot harder to read. But centering works nice for quotes, short 3 to 4 lines of paragraphs works really well centered. Anything over that, you may want to think differently about that layout. Okay, so we have this, and then I want this to be a playful font. So let's see if I can find something here that will work. Hang on, I have to clear out my filters here so I can find it. There we go. Summer font. Okay. And that is too small to read, so let's make that a little bit larger. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to just remove this last line just so we end up with 3 lines instead. All right, and so that gives us kind of a nice little opening quote here. And I'm going to hold down Alt-Shift, hover over this, or Option-Shift on a Mac, and drag this down. And let's just assume that this was a quote. So I'm going to recolor this text with this blue, and this is just going to be the author of our quote, and I don't want that to be the same font that I used in the quote. This is a great way to differentiate and create hierarchy in our designs by not using the same font and style for everything on that section. So let's go ahead and create something that's a little bit more, I want to say sans serif. So let me grab Media Gothic here might be good. Oh wait, no, I need something with a little bit more options. So this Helvetica New will work for a second. Yeah, so we just want something, let me see, not condensed, that's a little too much. Let me find another sans serif here. Here we go, perfect. Okay, and then we can shrink this size down. And anytime that I all cap something, I like to give a little bit more spacing between those letters just to make sure that it is legible. Okay, perfect. And then we're just going to center this up a little bit just so it fills that space. And then because we do have some white space here, let's go ahead and drop this cute little illustration in. So I've just dragged that in. I'm going to hold down Command or Control Shift and scale him down just so he kind of looks up at our quote. Okay, and then I move that up just a little bit. And here's another really cool tip. A lot of times when you're working with brochures and you are working with sponsor logos, I will tell you, like every sponsor logo comes with a white background, and it's extremely challenging to work with because it looks awful when you have a bunch of sponsor logos with white backgrounds. So if you run into this and you are using a light colored background, this only works with light colored backgrounds. You can right click on this, go to Effects Transparency, and you can set this blend mode to multiply, and it'll take the white out and it'll blend into the background graphic. But you can see that this works great in light. It doesn't work quite as well on dark because it's a multiply effect, so it actually darkens it on dark backgrounds. But if you're not using solid white, that's a great way to get the white out of that particular graphic if you don't have it in a transparent format. All right, so hitting W to preview, this is where we are right now, looking pretty good. So we've got a couple more areas to fill in with our content and text. So I'm going to go copy this again and bring that over here by holding down Alt or Option Shift to bring that over. And then again, we're going to rotate that to match. And you can click on your other item that's rotated to get the exact one if you need to. And then I'm going to copy and do the same thing with the author style, and we're going to rotate that 3.75. And then this is going to be, because it's our back panel, great opportunity for a phone number here. So just sort of styling this in here real quickly. And then potentially your website is another one down below. So that just puts some contact information, and then in this particular case I'm going to all caps that just so it has a little bit more emphasis. Preview that, and here now we've got a nice back panel designed, and I'm going to leave this empty, and that's okay. There's definitely something that could go here, but sometimes just having that clean white space is really important as well, because it's so much easier to scan your design that way. And I'm going to go ahead and copy again. When you copy text like this, it really helps keep your styles quickly when you're going across and keeping that design consistency in place, saving you a lot of time. Now in this case, the font is too light, so we're going to utilize the font that we used here instead so that we can see that better on that lighter that darker background color. And we don't need it to be as large, so I'm just scaling it down to about 14. And I'm going to bump a little bit of space in between this line. This is a bigger call to action here on this inside panel. I'm also going to bold it and make that a little bit smaller. Okay. And I'm using filler text, and it's the same here. So you would obviously adjust for your actual text that you want. But this creates a nice visual hierarchy when you bold and create emphasis on this particular item. And then let's say that we've got another one down here, but we don't have that same emphasis. It's going to be longer, so there's going to be more text here that I'm going to fill in with. And then we don't want this to be bolded. We want this to be regular, and we can actually take this down a little bit in both the size and line spacing here to fill that and add a little bit more text here. So you can see what happens when you do have more than just a few lines of text. Now, because of the way that we've brought this across, if we need to, we can always take that in slightly more to give us more room. But because of our margin line, we can center this up a little bit more to the left just to give it a little bit more space between here so that it's not completely overlapping. And we can make that a little bit smaller as well. Give it a little space. And now we preview that. So that's just a way to call out some text and then have some supporting text underneath it. So that's a good starting point with that. And if we end up with a lot of space here, we can balance this back out by bringing that blue background up and giving a little bit more of our image here. And that's great because now we can actually see her smiling face all the way, and she's not cropped quite as much. So this is where we made a decision early on in placement, but now we are adjusting that slightly based on our final design and how the content actually fit in here. So now we have all three of our back panels designed. We have the front here, we have the back panel, and then that inside flap when you open up your brochure. And we've pushed the boundary of our three panels, so it makes for a much more interesting design when we do that, and it makes it very easy to scan and emphasize the elements that we want to. Okay, just like we did with the front, we're going to bring in our big images and color blocking first, and then work out our content from there. We are going to bring the image in here and scale this down, and we have another similar situation to what we had with the illustration on the front where it's white, it's black and white, and so it doesn't work well with our cream color. But just like we did with that one, we can set the blend mode to multiply, and it will inherit that color much better and blend much nicer. So I'm going to scale this up a little bit, just keeping in mind of our fold line again. Now, one thing that's interesting about this with images that I want you to consider is when you have an image like this, this little guy's looking one way and she's looking off. But this would be a perfect case for if we just swapped the direction of this image. It would be much more flattering to the design, because then the adult in the image would be looking into our brochure instead of out of the brochure. So to do that, we are going to just go to right click, transform, flip horizontal, and then move this back here and reline this up. And then we're going to be careful of where the little guy ends, but right there on the line. And now you can see that's a much more flattering position for that image. And where this fits in the bottom, that she's looking down and at him. Okay, perfect. And then we've got this illustration here again. So we're going to put this sort of at the top to dress that up. And then I am just going to grab a text box for the content that would go in this middle section here. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill it with a little bit more text just for variety, because all of your text boxes will not be the same length or size. Okay, and so that gives us that panel. And we've got a little bit of extra space here. So again, holding down Command or Control Shift, I'm just going to scale this up slightly. And position this sizing just so that that image fills our space a little bit better. Perfect. So that we don't want as much white space there. Great. So now we just have two panels left. I'm going to squeeze this in just to clean this up. So this is another example where we want to be mindful of, do we want to stick to just designing in panels or really make this jump out like we did on the front? And so I'm going to lay an image here that is going to allow us to, okay, and so if this happens where you drag your image in, it just accidentally filled the background color. So just Command or Control Z back out, and then you get your image, and then just click it off the canvas, because what was happening was that image just filled the background color, which we do not want. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and scale this guy down here to something like that, where we're going to break the boundary of the brochure here a little bit and not keep things perfectly in our panels. But this is a case where we got to be a little careful because the glasses here does cut in the middle. Now, I will say when it comes to the inside of a brochure, I'm less concerned about where items are falling on the fold line, because typically at that point you are looking at it open. So these two panels will be open when somebody's looking at the inside, where if you had this on the closed brochure, it's going to cut that right off immediately, and we don't want that. So I am a little bit more forgiving when I'm on the inside panels because they are going to open up. But you can, if you've got an image that's flexible, you can do a little bit of scaling and adjusting of size here to make sure that that fold line is maybe not right in the eye like it was. So now it's going down the nose a little, so it's going to cut it off at a slightly different spot. So I'm still mindful of it, but I'm not as concerned that it's cutting through her face necessarily. All right, and if we preview it, you can see, again, we're creating a nice roadmap for where we can put content. So now we've got the item below. Now we have two choices. We can put content here, or we can carry it across. But in this case, I'm going to say that we've got quite a bit of content to cover. So let's go ahead and assume that we're going to put content in both of these panels, but still be mindful of a way to draw a design component that will not make it look like it's literally just stuck in panels. So with that in mind, we are going to move this image up just slightly, cutting into the forehead just to give us a little bit more room down here, grabbing another rectangle, And I'm going to come all the way down and draw across to fill this in with our blue color. All right, so now when I look at this, I'm going to make sure that this lines up with the image. Okay, and one thing I'd like to do is bring in an accent of this color, and a great way to do that is with a line. So I'm going to just come down slightly, not the whole distance, but I'm going to hold down Shift and drag that, and we're going to colorize it with our mint color. And then I'm going to come over here to stroke and give that a pretty substantial stroke weight, just so we've got a nice little visual accent here. So that creates a little separation in our design, but it creates a more clean and it gives us that pop of color that we want. Now, one thing I immediately know that I'm going to do here is I'm not going to have this come all the way down. Instead, we're going to kind of hit his shoulder with this, and then that's going to leave us room for another call to action. And so that means that I'm going to bring that up more like that. So now that created another asset in our design here that's going to make that a little bit more interesting than just having it all filled in. Now all we have to do is fill in our content. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to use this text style, but we want this to be the teal or that mint color. I need to bring that to the front. Okay, here we go. So that's going to be that kind of teal color. Now, this is a trick that works when you're stuck with light fonts like this, and you can see I don't have any other option to bold it. So I'm going to do like a fake bold here, and that means that you're going to give it a slight stroke. And that's a quick little way to give some emphasis to your font when you're stuck and you need some bolding action, but you can't because the font style doesn't come with it. So this is essentially going to be our headline, and I do want to all caps the headline, give it a little bit of cushion here, and we're going to scale this up slightly, and we are going to left justify that. Okay, so we have a headline here, and I essentially have like 3 blocks of text that I need. So I'm just going to duplicate this headline a few times just to give us our area for content, and then clone this again and go ahead and go to our paragraph here, left align that, again bring this to the front so we can see it, and then this inside text is going to be white. Sorry, not the stroke, the actual text here is going to be white. Okay, and we don't want it to be that style because we can't see that as well. So we're going to use our sans serif font that we've been using before. Take that down, and so now we've got room here for some content, and then we can go ahead and duplicate this across and then duplicate this across one more time. Okay, and then we can vary this content a little bit just to give you an idea when you have different amounts of text that you need to fit into an area. And then the final thing that we're going to do in this text box is this guy. We're going to go ahead and bullet this, so that bullets are a great thing to have on brochures to list items out and make content scannable. So we're going to just go ahead and quickly create a few of these guys just for some list items if you needed to bold anything. And these headlines are just a little large, so let's go ahead and scale those down a little bit. I just selected them by clicking and holding down Shift each time I clicked to select all of those at the same time. Okay, so now we have something like that, not too shabby. I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. See what happens when you make something a little bit smaller is that it puts emphasis on something as you're reading across. And that's a great way to create visual hierarchy in your designs, is through size and color. Okay, from here we've got a few more illustrations that we can scatter into the white space of this design. So let's see. And this is another good opportunity to, I'm not worried about this being on the fold line per se, because again, these are just some design assets and it's going to be flat when I look at this. And then let's put this little one over here. Okay, so we have something like this, and give this a little bit more cushion. Okay, so now we've created a great layout for this that really pushes the boundaries of our panel design. And so we can continue to refine a little bit here if we needed to fit more content, give things a little bit more space and room with the layout that we've chosen here. Then there is some flexibility just to give things adequate space. I like white space here. But now we've got a little bit of room down here. So again, this is a great opportunity for a call to action. So I'm going to copy again this guy, and this will be like a discover more that we are going to all caps and put some space in here. And so this can reiterate a phone number or a website address if you want to. So you can go ahead and bring this in from the back panel if you want to, and make that not rotated. And then what I would do in this case, just to keep everything in this margin line so it doesn't get cut off when we print, is put that on one line. You could also put your social media here as a link or anything that would send people for more information. And then we're going to go ahead and make that slightly larger just so it stands out. Okay, and we've got something like this. All right, so there you have it. In under an hour, we have a completely designed brochure ready to go. And now that we've got the formatting in place, there's a lot of opportunity now to take what you've learned and apply it to any of your brochure designs that you have coming up. Really try to push that envelope with breaking across your fold lines and your panels and using color and imagery to do that and direct the eye around your design. Think about how you want to lay out that content so it's scannable. You want to keep that text content to a minimum and use quality, really bright, standout imagery to draw the eye all the way around your design and create a visual hierarchy. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about this process, please leave them below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to stay up to date with the latest and greatest here at Design Like a Pro, and I will see you in the next lesson.